If you've been trying to purchase a Nintendo Switch recently and haven't been able to, you're not alone. Nintendo Switch consoles are universally sold out and will continue to be so for the foreseeable future. But why is this? Nintendo's losing out on sales, aren't they? Or are they? You know, this isn't the first time this has happened. Even not that long ago, just a mere 4 months ago, Nintendo released the NES Classic. And they're still next to impossible to find. In fact, I spoke to my local video game store and they haven't seen one at all. They didn't get a single unit to sell. Going back even further, looking at the Wii, they were hard to find even 2 years after release. I got my own Wii several months after release because I happened to know someone that worked at the Walmart electronics department. I gave her the money, she just sort of bought it and then gave it to me. What's happening is something called artificial scarcity. It's when a company has a large supply, yet they artificially reduce the supply, typically in order to drive up the prices. But Nintendo isn't driving up the prices. In fact, the prices are the lowest for a console right now. As a side note, artificial scarcity is completely the reason why diamonds are so expensive. They're not actually that rare, they're just artificially inflated in value. But that's a story for a different day. So if Nintendo isn't doing this to increase the price of their products, then what benefit do they actually get from this? Before we try to answer that, I want to look at something called pre-orders. Now for the consumer, what a pre-order is a way to ensure that you're going to get the product at launch. Now this really just moves the rush from the launch to a prior day beforehand. Now the whole idea of pre-orders is actually quite debatable from a consumer standpoint because you're giving money for something that oftentimes hasn't even been reviewed yet. But for manufacturers, the main incentive is actually not to get you to spend money on something before everyone finds out it's bad. It's actually to get an idea as to how much demand there is for a product. Say if something sells all of the pre-orders in mass numbers, then the company knows to produce a lot of it to meet that demand. If they don't sell that many pre-orders, then they get to kind of hold off on the production so they don't end up with massive warehouses filled with product that they can't sell. Looking at you, BlackBerry. Now when Nintendo creates artificial scarcity, even with their pre-orders, that completely nullifies all value and purpose of pre-orders. Not only can most consumers not get a pre-order because the pre-orders are sold out in minutes, but Nintendo as a company doesn't get a real idea as to how much demand there is because it just sells out instantly, so there's almost no valuable data there. As earlier alluded to, if we look at this in terms of economics with supply and demand, you might think that Nintendo has an opportunity to reduce supply with increased demand, increasing prices, and take advantage of that. For example, they could have very likely sold the Switch at $400 for several months until people stopped being willing to pay that price point, to which point they could drop it to $300. And then a whole swath of new people would be willing to pay. In fact, Nintendo isn't making any increased profit off this relative increase in demand. All that scarcity value isn't going to Nintendo, it's going to scalpers. People on eBay and even Amazon are selling the Nintendo Switch for $450 to $600 US. I've honestly made an effort to try to find out why Nintendo does this. There's quite a number of theories flying around, and most of them aren't really plausible. The only one that I can think of that makes any sense at all is that Nintendo believes that increased relative demand to the supply increases perceived demand and will increase the hype and thus increase long-term sales. The issue is I have yet to see a shred of evidence that this actually works. Looking past over several generations, Nintendo's had the same strategy. There's artificial scarcity with every single launch, and even so, some consoles are more or less successful than others. This, combined with the success of other companies that don't use artificial scarcity, really leads me to believe that it doesn't work. In fact, when they have done well, there have been very definite and attributed reasons for that success. For example, the Wii was successful because it was very low price, And it offered this incredible new gaming kind of experience in an accessible, fun way for the entire family, something that no console had really done before. The Wii U offered a new kind of controller, this neat gamepad that a lot of people really liked. Yet the console still wasn't successful. Looking at other companies, there's Apple, who is a god of marketing. Even if you don't like Apple's products, you can't deny that they're incredible at marketing. And if you go to any Apple store or store that sells Apple products in general, within the first week of the release of the product, the new iPhone or whatever it is, you can walk out with one. You might not get the size and color you want, but you can walk away with an iPhone. Look at Ryzen, which just hit the market. Prices incredibly low, aim to disrupt the market. Ryzen has been sitting at the top of Amazon's bestseller list since the day they went on pre-order. Yet they're still available. You can buy one today. I could keep going, but I'm not going to prove this exhaustively. And we've made the point that you don't need artificial scarcity to sell a product. In fact, what's one of the things that people tend to go to when they're considering buying a product? Something that the media really tends to reiterate a lot? Sales. How many units are being sold? It's the same with movies. If a movie has huge box office and lots of sales, then the idea is, well, maybe everyone else should go to see it because lots of other people are going to see it. If lots of people are buying this console, well, maybe you should too. Artificial scarcity honestly just makes Nintendo Switch look artificially weak. And when you think about it, who's the one other than Nintendo themselves that are most affected by poor sales of a console? If a game developer sees that a console isn't selling well, why are they going to make games for it or port games to it? Porting a game to a new platform actually takes a fair bit amount of work when the new platform is running on a completely different architecture and has quite vastly different system capabilities, like the Nintendo Switch compared to any of the consoles or PC. Now, next time you go to a store to buy a Nintendo console and you get told by the teller that they're out of stock, just remember that artificial scarcity that's inconveniencing you isn't even benefiting Nintendo. So it's just a lose-lose. That probably won't make you feel any better, I'm sorry. No, of course, this is all my own personal opinion and speculation based on the little bit of research that I've done. If you have different opinions as to whether artificial scarcity is a benefit to Nintendo, or even have different theories as to why they use artificial scarcity, let me know in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts.